Hong Kong Chinese servicemen on parade for the British governor of Hong Kong. But just a few months later, their units were disbanded. And what had been a British Crown colony was handed back to communist Chinese rule. Of the 1,500 men who served in the ranks of the Royal Navy and the British Army, only 159 were granted a British passport. In the decades that have followed, there have been protests over the departure from the one country, two systems principle designed to preserve democracy in Hong Kong. And now, those who serve the British are concerned for their safety. I caught up with them 24 years after they lost their British military roles.
Since I was a child, I wished to join the army to be a soldier.
James Lai joined the army in 1985 and spent 10 years working as a clerk. He'd planned to stay longer, but handover put a stop to that.
It was a very frustration and disappointment for me because I lost my job. After I go to the civilian company, I only got half pay of my salary.
Since then, James has made repeated applications for British citizenship, but without success. Peter Vorberg served in Hong Kong in the 1980s. He's been campaigning for Hong Kong Chinese servicemen to be granted the right to live in the UK for the last 10 years.
Initially, the government said that they weren't classed as veterans, which was quite early on. And what they said is they were only local hired people who didn't serve outside of Hong Kong and were therefore not classed as servicemen and soldiers and veterans.
And is that accurate? Is that a fair description?
No, that they paid UK tax. They literally served with NATO forces in other countries. You know, some of them supported the troops going to the Falklands. And, so Hong Kong servicemen, historically over the years have been side by side, with British veterans.
Campaigners believe there are around 300 veterans still fighting for British citizenship. Roger Ng served for 12 years in the Royal Army Medical Corps.
I got a little bit nervous when being handed over for Chinese government. I really scared if in some days they're going to find me out and say, oh, you're working British Army and I'm now sentenced you to something like that.
It's a source of bitter disappointment to Roger. Applications for a British passport have been repeatedly turned down.
One thing I'm really upset is, the British government now is giving a BNO for the migration in a conditioning, right? So they give 5 + 1 year, something like that.
Roger's referring to the recent visa offer from the Foreign Office, a so-called road to citizenship, which the UK government say is open to any Hong Kong national with British national overseas status.
Right, the thing is, the youngsters throwing stones, they set up the fire. They got a recognition by British government. They give them passport in conditioning. In contrast, we work for 12 years in British Army, or somebody worked 20 years in British Army. They don't have recognition.
Recent unrest on the street has been met with an increasingly hardline response from mainland China. A series of new laws have been passed, tightening security and moving further away from the freedom and democratic values hoped for under the original One Country, Two Systems agreement between Britain and China.
Most worrying is the new implemented Chinese national security law. This law gives the police more power to arrest anybody.
Do you think that veterans like yourself are particularly vulnerable in this situation?
Yeah, of course. We have once served with the British Army. In accordance with the national security law, we are liable to be charged for betraying the Chinese government or spying for the British government.
In a statement, a Home Office spokesperson said, "The government remains extremely grateful to those who served in the Hong Kong Military Service Corps. We're giving careful consideration to representations made on behalf of these personnel who are unable to obtain citizenship through the selection scheme. But there are no plans to reopen applications for British national overseas status or expand the eligibility for the BNO route. Campaigners say less than a third of the 300 Hong Kong Chinese veterans pursuing citizenship hold BNO status.
I call Lord Craig of Radley.
Former Chief of the Defence Staff, Lord Craig, is one of several parliamentarians pressing the government to do more.
I think they've got a very good case. I think they deserve an answer, and I personally will continue to press for an answer. Even if it's no, it's an answer. What is really unsatisfactory is this continuous, we are actively considering it. Well, they've had 6 years of active consideration. And blimey, it's about time they showed that they were fit for purpose at the Home Office and did something about it.
24 years after the handover from British to Chinese rule, this small group of veterans say they feel abandoned by the country they served for so many years. Rosie Layden, Forces News. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.